Hello everyone, welcome to Lukman IAS. So today in our The Hindu newspaper analysis, we are going to discuss some important articles from The Hindu newspaper dated 10th of March 2021. Okay, so the topic that we are going to understand for the day are listed over here. Okay, so we are going to see these topics one by one. The first topic will be National Social Assistance Program. This topic is important from the social justice perspective under General Studies paper 2. Then the second topic that we are going to cover for the day is Lafarge mining case of 2011. This case was recently in news. We will understand why it was in news and what is the topic all about. Okay, this topic is important from Indian polity and constitution perspective under General Studies paper 2. Then we are going to understand about the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1967. Okay, this is important under governance section of General Studies paper 2. Then we are going to understand the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, which is also known as Quad in short. Okay, this is important from international relations perspective and it will be covered under General Studies paper 2. Okay, after then we are going to look into the Cyber Volunteers program of the Ministry of Home Affairs. Okay, this is important under the governance section of General Studies paper 2. So let us quickly look into these topics one by one and let us understand these topics in detail. Okay, so the first topic for the day is National Social Assistance Program. So we are going to understand like why this National Social Assistance Program was in news. Okay, and after then we will understand what is National Social Assistance Program. Then we are going to understand about various components or various schemes under National Social Assistance Program. Then we will understand about the recent move of the Parliamentary Standing Committee with reference to the National Social Assistance Program. Okay, so let us quickly see why National Social Assistance Program was in news. Okay, so recently, okay, the Parliamentary Standing Committee has submitted a report to the Lok Sabha. Okay, and in that report the Parliamentary Standing Committee has said that the center must increase the meager pensions that are provided for poor citizens, widows and disabled people. Okay, so this was the context in which this particular topic was in news. So now let us understand what is National Social Assistance Program. Okay, so this National Social Assistance Program is a centrally sponsored scheme. Okay, what are centrally sponsored scheme? These are schemes of the Government of India in which the central government also gives a share for the implementation of a particular program. For example, 60% of the money is being given by the central government and rest 40% will be given by the respective state governments. And in case of northeastern and hilly states, the central government gives 90% for the implementation of this scheme and the state governments will have to invest only 10% for the implementation of this scheme. So this is the general case and it may vary from the program to program. What we need to understand is like this particular scheme, National Social Assistance Program, is a centrally sponsored scheme. It simply means central government will have a share, state government will have a share in the total expenditure for the implementation of this scheme. Okay, so this National Social Assistance Program of the Government of India provides financial assistance to the elderly, widows, persons with disabilities in the form of social pensions. Okay, so now let us understand about like who are the beneficiaries of this National Social Assistance Program. Okay, so this particular program is applicable to the elders, widows and physically challenged people. Okay, so let us see like how much benefit is being provided to these beneficiaries under the National Social Assistance Program. Okay, so a pension of rupees 200 to 500 a month for senior citizens in the BPL households. BPL stands for below poverty level. Okay, below poverty level. Okay, so a pension of 202 rupees 500 is provided to senior citizens who belong to the BPL households, and under the same program we have a widow pension scheme, and under this scheme rupees 300 to 500 a month is provided for widows who are aged over 40 years in BPL households. As I already said, BPL stands for below poverty line. Okay. Then under the same program we have a disability pension scheme as well. Okay. So under the disability pension scheme, rupees 300 per month is provided for persons who are aged between 18 years and 79 years with severe or multiple disabilities in the BPL households. Okay. And there is another component of the program as well. Under this particular component, a family benefit of rupees 20,000 is provided upon the death of a breadwinner aged between 18 to 59 in BPL households. Let's consider there is a BPL household, and in that BPL household there is a sole breadwinner, means there is a person who earns solely to feed his family, and if that person happens to be aged between 18 to 59 years, and if in case he dies, the government will provide 20,000 rupees benefit to the BPS other members of the BPL households who are dependent. Okay. And under the same program we have Annapurna scheme as well. Okay. So under Annapurna scheme, 10 kilogram of food grains is provided per month for senior citizens who are not receiving any pension. Okay. So this is the benefit, okay, that is being provided, okay, to the beneficiaries under the program. Okay. But recently what has happened, the Parliamentary Standing Committee has criticized the government that the government is not increasing the benefit amount that is being provided to the beneficiaries, because the benefit is very low, very minute. It is hardly able to feed a person for one day or two. Okay, means 200 or 500 rupees a month to a beneficiary is not sufficient. So Parliamentary Standing Committee was very critical about the government's inactivity. The Parliamentary Standing Committee has said that the government should take proactive measures to increase the amount, okay, to increase the amount that is being disbursed under the scheme. And at the same time, the Parliamentary Standing Committee has said that Ministry of Rural Development has not been proactive in implementation of this particular scheme. It said that the Ministry of Rural Development should also work, okay, hand in hand with the government, and they should together increase the amount, and at the same time they should ensure that benefit under this particular program should be provided to the last mile beneficiaries, means it should reach to the to the grassroots level of the society, so that like the actual beneficiaries are benefited under this particular scheme. Okay. So what you can do is you can simply pause this particular video, you can read the criticism of the government's inactivity by the Parliamentary Standing Committee. Okay. And if you want to learn more about this particular topic, you can follow this reference link from The Hindu, or you can also visit the Ministry of Rural Development's website to understand about National Social Assistance Program. Okay. So having understood the first topic, let us quickly move to the next topic for the day. Here we are going to understand about an important case. Okay. This case is about Lafarge mining case of 2011. Why this particular case was in news? Because recently it has been published by The Hindu that Supreme Court has questioned delay in setting up of environment regulator. Supreme Court of India has recently questioned the central government in delay in the implementation of or in setting up of the environment regulator. Okay. So there must be some background, like why there is a delay by the central government is setting up of an environment regulator. So what is the background? So the thing is, the Supreme Court of India had already given a judgment in that perspective in the year of 2011, and in that judgment the Supreme Court of India has said to the central government that you should implement an environment regulator. Okay, you should implement or you should set up a body that will be regulating the environment related issues. Okay. So like from 2011 till 2021, it has been a decade, it has been 10 years, okay, that the central government has not implemented an environment regulator. So Prashant Bhushan, who is a lawyer of the Supreme Court of India, he has brought forward this particular issue in front of the Supreme Court of India, okay. So he has filed a case against the government of India, that government of India is not implementing, okay, is not abiding by the judgment of the Supreme Court of India in the Lafarge mining case of 2011. So let us understand, okay, let us understand about this particular topic, okay. So the government of India is at a lapse, means government of India has not implemented what the Supreme Court has directed to the government of India, okay. So this particular case is known as, it is known as Lafarge Umium Mining Private Limited versus Union of India, and it is also commonly known as Lafarge mining case, okay. So this was the case, and let us understand some points about the case. So what was the background? I had already discussed about the background, that Supreme Court of India had already asked the central government, okay, to appoint a national regulator for appraising projects, enforcing environmental conditions for approvals, and to impose penalties on polluters, okay. So for these issues, for appraising projects, for enforcing environmental conditions, and for approvals, and to implement penalties on polluters, the Supreme Court of India has asked the central government to implement an independent regulator, okay. So in that order, the court had explained what is the need of having an independent regulator. So the court has said that identification of an area as forest area is solely based on the declaration to be filed by the user agency, means like those agencies that want some kind of forest area for implementing a particular project, they themselves file the declaration that this is a forest area or this is not a forest area, okay. So it is at the sole discretion of those user agencies. So Supreme Court of India says you should have an independent regulator who should be looking after which area should be declared as a forest area or not, okay. This was one of the need. And second thing is these project proponents under the existing dispensation is required to undertake an environmental impact assessment by an expert body or institution, okay. So these user agencies are required to take up the environmental impact assessment by an expert institution. So the court has directed that you should implement an independent regulator to look after these issues, okay. So the court had made it clear that till such mechanism was put in place, the Environment Ministry or Ministry of Environment and Forest, okay, should prepare a panel of accredited institutions from which alone the project proponent should obtain the rapid environmental impact assessment, and that too on the terms of reference to be formulated by the Ministry of Environment and Forest, okay. So this was the reference. So why this particular article is important? Because this particular article highlights this particular case. What is the case? Lafarge mining case. That is an important case study. Whenever you are writing an answer in General Studies paper 2, you can highlight this particular case, and you can highlight related to environmental thing also in General Studies paper 3 under Environment and Ecology section. You can just write down about this particular case, that under this case the Supreme Court has said or has directed the central government to implement an independent authority, okay, to look after the environmental clearance or appraisal of environmental projects and all, okay. So this is a very important topic, and recently, okay, the government of India has also notified the draft Environmental Impact Assessment Act as well, okay. So there has been an environmental impact assessment notification by the government of India, okay. So it has made various changes to the earlier environmental impact assessment procedures, okay. You should look into that particular topic as well. So this is important from General Studies paper 2 perspective as well as 3 under Environment and Ecology section. So having understood that topic, let us quickly move to the next topic for the day. We are going to understand about the quadrilateral security dialogue. quadrilateral security dialogue. Okay, why quadrilateral security dialogue is in news? Because recently, recently it was being notified by different media agencies that Prime Minister of Australia, okay, Prime Minister of Australia said that the Quad would soon meet at summit level. Okay, so the Prime Minister of Australia has said that the Quad will soon meet at summit level. So it highlights the importance of Quad. Okay, so let us understand what is Quad. Okay, and before this, let us read the headline of this particular news. This headline says Quad strategic opportunity or quagmire. Okay, the grouping neither shares a strategic vision nor is it animated by a shared agenda. Okay, so the author, author of this particular article happens to be a former ambassador of India. Okay, he was a former ambassador of India to United Arab Emirates and to certain other Middle East countries. So that ambassador has highlighted, is this particular Quad grouping an strategic opportunity or it is going to be a devastation. Okay, so he has put forward his views related to whether it is an opportunity or whether it is going to be a setback for India. And at the same time, he has highlighted that Quad misses a strategic vision. They do not have a comprehensive and clear-cut vision among the members. And at the same time, the author has pointed out that it is not animated by any shared agenda. Okay, so that was the brief about why it was in news. Now let us understand what is Quad. Okay, so Quad stands for Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. Quad stands for Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, and it is an informal strategic dialogue between India, United States of America, Japan and Australia, okay, with a shared objective to ensure and support a free, open and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. Okay, so in this particular Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, there are 4 member countries. What are those 4 member countries? Number 1 is India, number 2 is Australia, number 3 is United States of America and number 4 is Japan. Okay, so all the blue colored shaded countries in this particular world map are members of Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. There are 4 member countries: India, Australia, United States of America and Japan. These are the 4 member countries. Why there is a need of having a Quadrilateral Security Dialogue? Because these member countries want to counter, okay, they want to counter the hegemonic trend of China. Okay, China is increasing its wing, okay, in South Asia, and China has One Belt One Road initiative under which it tries to move the logistics, okay, logistics from their country through Asian subcontinent to the European countries. So the thing is, India is worried about increasing hegemony or increasing influence of China in South Asian region. Okay, so that's why India has also partnered, okay, with the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. And why United States is worried about China? Because United States and China have been rivals of one another for a long time. Okay, although there are investment related treaties between them, United States and China, there are businessmen from United States who have invested their money into China and they are still doing business. Even India has a very good business tie-up with China. But that business tie-up and geopolitical issues are little bit different from one another. Okay, geopolitics is more important. Okay, so this author has highlighted why it is important. Okay, why it is important for India to look for its own interest. Okay, in spite. Okay, despite. Instead of, why India should look for its own interest first instead of looking for being a sheep in a particular kind of herd. Okay, so the author has said we have already learned our lesson okay, in our like India China standoff in the northern region in Ladakh recently, okay. So in the northern region in Ladakh, when India China standoff was happening, okay, we had seen very minute interference or very minute help from United States of America. So United States of America did not come forward in support of India, okay, did not come forward in support of India to the extent that India had expected, okay. So it highlights that like our relations, our economic relations may be good with the United States as well as China, but when it comes to geopolitical issue, the United States of America, is not that proactive that it should be, okay. So the thing is, it can be taken as a lesson for by India, that like India should look for its interest to secure its border first, and at the same time we should maintain our prominence in the South Asian region, and at the same time we should take care of the Indian Ocean region first, okay. We should take care of Indian Ocean region first, and for that purpose the government of India has already Sagar vision, okay, security and growth for all in the region. We have Sagar vision for having our proper proper like place in the Indian Ocean region. So we have a Sagar vision, and at the same time, okay, at the same time this Indo-Pacific vision, like when we talk about this Indo-Pacific vision, this Indo-Pacific vision is in itself an idea, and this idea has not materialized yet, because like when we talk about Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean, okay, although all the oceans in the world are connected, but like we see little tilt towards that thing, okay. So instead of focusing more on other issues, India should focus on its interest first. Why India should focus? Because like because there are multiple reasons, okay. I am going to talk about those reasons one by one. First of all, the author of this particular article highlights, okay, what he highlights, he says that like India has not been pursuing its foreign policy in a coherent and, okay, long term sustained manner, okay. So India has been proactive, India had short term vision, and at the same time India did not had a like coherent foreign policy for a long time, because the author says that the present government, okay, present government takes the foreign policy of India as an ad hoc thing. It should not be considered as an ad hoc thing, it should be considered as a permanent thing by the government of India, and it should be given similar importance as we are giving to the national policy, okay. When we are talking about the domestic policy for India, the present government seems to be giving more more and more like emphasis on that issues by neglecting the foreign policy related things of the government of India. So the author says that foreign policy of India should be taken at par with the domestic policies of India. That is one thing. Second thing, it said that like the present government of India seems to be focusing less, okay, on importance of maintaining a proper maintaining a proper balance in power, okay, with its neighborhood and foreign countries like Japan, United States and Australia, okay. So there are various things that have been highlighted by the author, and so as we have already discussed that like when did India come to started becoming part of Quad? India had started becoming part of Quad after China has increased its hegemony in the South Asian region, okay. So as of now China is at an upper hand, so India should focus on its on securing its border first, and at the same time it should focus on having proper influence in the Indian Ocean region, and after then it should look forward for this particular thing, Quad, because Quad is going to take a long time, okay. So India should balance its interest, okay, India should balance its interest in domestic policies as well as foreign policies when it comes to Quad grouping, okay. So that's all about this particular article, okay. In your free time you can just pause this particular screen I'm just keeping it for a minute. Okay, so India and Quad, I have already talked about it. Okay, India and Quad. So it says like we should we should reset alignments and policies. Okay, so the author says that Ladakh, okay, experience in Ladakh like the bitter experience in Ladakh should act as a as a guiding factor for us, and it has affirmed the limits of India-US security ties, the folly of Indian involvement in the Quad, and the need to focus national attention and resources in areas of abiding interest in India, okay, the border, the neighborhood, and the Indian Ocean. So the author has said that India should focus on its border, its neighborhoods, and Indian Ocean, okay, it has said. Okay, so the author has said that Ladakh offers some valuable lessons for India. What are those valuable lessons? One, rebuilding ties with China will have to be a priority concern. Though it will take time for the trust to be restored, what will help will be for India to dilute its focus on the Indo-Pacific and the Quad and accept that the borders and Indian Oceans are where its crucial interests lie. So the author says that India should rebuild trust with China. Okay, it should have a better policy framework towards China, and at the same time, like, it should focus more on building trust with its neighbors, okay, then putting resources and interest in Indo-Pacific and Quad. And second thing that the author has said, that the Ladakh experience has highlighted certain deficiencies at home. The government appears to be largely focused on reshaping the national ethos on the basis of narrow and exclusive political ideology that has raised doubts about India's continued commitment to democratic pluralism. It hardly needs reiteration that India's capacities can only be built by united people committed to the national cause. Okay, so these are some of the things that the author has highlighted. Okay, so author says that we should look towards our interest first, for safeguarding our border and having good relations with our neighbors and maintaining proper importance in the Indian Ocean region. Okay, if you want to learn more, you can follow this reference link from The Hindu. Okay, so let us quickly move to the next topic for the day. We are going to understand about Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Why Unlawful Activities Prevention Act was in news? Because recently the Ministry of Home Affairs has tabled data in the Lok Sabha that has highlighted that there has been over 72% increase in the number of persons arrested under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act in 2019 as compared to 2015. Okay, so Ministry of Home Affairs has put data in the Lok Sabha that highlights that the number of arrest of persons under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act has increased by 72% from 2015 to 2019. So that's why it is important for us to understand what is Unlawful Activities Prevention Act and what are its various provisions. And before that, let us look into this particular graph that was in news today. Okay, so this particular graph highlights the sharp rise in the number of arrests under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Okay, so this says that within a year from 2018 to 2019 there has been an increase in 37% in the number of arrests that were made under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Okay, so it says that with 306 cases, Manipur registered the most such cases in 2019. Okay, so Manipur was the state in India that has arrested 306 people. Like, it has it has filed 306 cases under UAPA in 2019 alone. So Manipur was the state that has registered most number of cases in 2019. And at the same time, this report says as many as 1,948 persons were arrested under the act in 2019. Okay, total, if we talk about India, okay, total, okay, in all, 1948 persons were arrested under the UAPA. And if you see this particular graph, the x-axis of this particular graph, like this particular axis, showcases the years like 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19. And this particular, like y-axis shows the, number of persons who are arrested, okay, who are arrested under the UAPA, okay. So you can see that, the cases registered were little less, but number of people who were arrested were really high, okay. In 2019, as many as 1948 individuals were arrested under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So this graph is important for you to understand the importance of this particular act. So now let us understand what is Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1967. What is this act? Okay, the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act is an Indian law that is aimed at prevention of unlawful activities by individuals and associations in India. Its main objective was to make powers available for dealing with activities that are directed against the integrity and unity of India, okay. So those activities that are directed against unity and integrity of India, okay. So to curb those, activities, Government of India has come up with Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, okay. So the main focal point in this particular act is unity and integrity of India, okay. So to maintain unity and integrity of India, the Government of India come up with this Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So let us understand about the background of the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, okay. So what has happened? The National Integration Council, okay, National Integration Council had appointed a committee, and name of the committee is Committee on National Integration and Regionalism, okay. And this committee has recommended to the government, okay, for the implementation of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So Government of India has accepted the recommendation of the Committee on National Integration and Regionalism, and Government of India has enacted the Constitution 16th Amendment Act in 1963, okay. After bringing this Constitution 16th Amendment Act in 1963, the Government of India has empowered the Parliament, okay, to impose by law reasonable restrictions, okay. So this particular Amendment Act has empowered the Parliament to impose reasonable restrictions on these issues. What are the issues on which reasonable restrictions could be put, okay. So all of it that you can see, these are fundamental rights under Article 19 of the Constitution of India, like right to freedom, right to freedom of speech and expression, right to assemble peaceably and without arms, right to form associations or unions, okay. So this Unlawful Activities Prevention Act gives the Parliament the power to impose reasonable restrictions on the exercise of these, okay, these fundamental rights, okay. Why? In the interest of sovereignty and integrity of India, okay, in the interest of sovereignty and integrity of India. And what is the objective of this Unlawful Activities Prevention Act? Its objective is to make powers available for dealing with activities that are directed against the integrity and sovereignty of India, okay. So integrity and sovereignty of India are most important, and for upholding the integrity and sovereignty of India, the Government of India came up with Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, and under that act the Government of India has empowered the Parliament of India to impose reasonable restrictions on the fundamental rights that are mentioned under Article 19 of the Constitution of India, okay. These are the fundamental rights on which reasonable restrictions can be put under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, okay. So having understood this, let us move little further to understand about the mechanism of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, Prevention Amendment Act of 2019, okay. We are going to understand what is the mechanism, okay. So as you can see, this is an act, okay, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, okay. It has various sections, okay. So like I am going to discuss about those important sections that are important for the exam perspective and important in general to understand, okay. So we are going to discuss only the important sections of the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, okay. So under this particular UAPA Act, like under section 13 of the UAPA, the permission of the Ministry of Home Affairs is required. Okay, so under section 13 of the UAPA, permission of the Ministry of Home Affairs is required. However, for prosecution under section 16, 17 and 18, permission of the respective state government is required. Okay, so if you are prosecuting someone under section 13, permission of the Ministry of Home Affairs is required, and if you are if you are exercising section 16, 17 and 18, permission of the respective state government is required. Then section 25 allows the National Investigation Agency, okay, NIA stands for National Investigation Agency, NIA stands for National Investigation Agency. So section 25 allows the National Investigation Agency to seize property it considers to be proceeds of terrorism with the written consent of the Director General of Police of the state. Okay, so the thing is, section 25 empowers the National Investigation Agency to seize the property, okay, that the NIA considers that this property was brought, okay, with the help of terrorism and all, okay, with the proceeds or with the gains of terrorism. Okay, so those property can be seized by NIA, but they have to take the permission, written permission of the Director General of Police of a state. Okay, however, it is possible for an NIA officer, okay, it is possible for an National Investigation Agency officer to obtain consent of the DGP of the NIA. Okay, so they can obtain the consent of the Director General of Police of National Investigation Agency, okay, by bypassing the state DGP police, like a state Director General of Police. Okay, so they can bypass the state DGP just by getting the consent of the DGP of the NIA. Normally, they would have 60 to 90 days to investigate, but however, under the UAPA, this pre-charge sheet time is extended to 180 days. Okay, this under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, this pre-charge sheet time is extended to 180 days. And further, normal bail rules do not apply to an accused under section 43D of the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Okay, so normal bail rules do not apply, okay, to an accused under section 43D of the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967. Okay, so what are the criticism of the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act? Okay, there are many criticism of this particular act. Okay, so government claims that the bill would give it power to probe terror attacks on India. Okay, but there are many criticism. One of the criticism is that opposition parties has claimed that this particular act is draconian. Okay, it is draconian, and this particular bill did not contain any provision to prevent misuse. Okay, so there is no provision to prevent misuse. So provisions of this particular act can be misused also, but there is no provision to prevent misuse. That's the thing. Okay, specifically the power to designate an individual as a terrorist before being proven guilty by trial was criticized. Okay, so this particular act gives the power, okay, to NIA, okay, to arrest and designate an individual as a terrorist without any trial conducted. Okay, so they are not conducting any trial, no hearing, nothing like that. They are directly designating an individual or an organization as a terrorist or terrorist organization. Okay, so critics of UAPA considers definition of terrorist, like to threaten or likely to strike terror, to be very broad and open to misuse by the police, as the burden of proof of innocence is on the accused. Okay, so burden of proof of innocence is on the accused means like the government agencies or like police authorities, they can detain a particular person directly without any kind of hearing, and to prove himself as innocent, the burden lies on the accused itself, like who is detained. So how he will be how he will be able to like exercise his right to freedom to actually go to a court and all. So this is being criticized. Okay, if you want to learn more, you can follow this reference link from The Hindu. You can also follow the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. You just need to click over here and this Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1967 will open up. Okay, it will start downloading. Okay, in the similar fashion. So now let us move to the next topic for the day. Now we are going to understand about Cyber Volunteers Program. Okay, Cyber Volunteers Program. So let us understand what is Cyber Volunteers Program and why it was in news. Recently the Ministry of Home Affairs has reported to the Lok Sabha. Okay, it has reported to the Lok Sabha that Ministry of Home Affairs has implemented, okay, this Cyber Volunteers Program. So let us understand what is Cyber Volunteers Program. Okay, under Cyber Volunteers Program, what happens, the Ministry of Home Affairs allows a particular citizen of India, any citizen of India, to file, okay, to file complaints against any citizen, okay, or any organization, okay, about an unlawful content online. Okay, so it gives rise to lateral surveillance, concept of lateral surveillance. That's the thing that we had discussed earlier as well. Okay, so what is the rationale of this particular program? When we talk about this particular program, so what is the rationale of this particular program? Okay, so the challenges, this particular step of the government of India was criticized by various opposition parties, and it is being criticized by intellectuals in India. Okay, so the government of India has given some rationale, means it has put forward its view that why this particular act is important. Okay, so one of the rationale is the government says that this cyberspace faces a lot of challenges, because like cyberspace is very vast and it is borderless. Okay, cyberspace is very vast and borderless, and at the same time this cybercrime volunteer framework has been rolled out as an initiative as part of cyber hygiene promotion. Okay, so government of India says that we want to promote cyber hygiene. Okay, so that's why we are coming up with cybercrime volunteer framework, and this cyber hygiene promotion will bring together citizens to contribute in the fight against cybercrime in the country and assist the state or UT law enforcement agencies in their endeavor to curb cyber crimes. Okay, so the government of India is saying that we want to improve cyber hygiene. For that purpose, we are allowing the citizens of India to come forward and assist the state governments and union territory law enforcement agencies, okay, in curbing the cyber crimes. And the volunteers will be enrolled and their services utilized by the respective state or UT police authorities as per the requirement. Okay, so this is the standpoint of the government of India in that perspective. So let us understand, apart from this cyber volunteer program, do we have any other measures or an additional initiative of the government of India? Okay, so the Ministry of Home Affairs has notified to the Lok Sabha that the Ministry of Home Affairs had already operationalized the National Cyber Crime Reporting Portal on August 30, 2019. Okay, so Ministry of Home Affairs had already operationalized the National Cyber Crime Reporting Portal on August 30, 2019 to provide a centralized mechanism to the citizens for online reporting, okay, for online reporting of all types of cybercrime incidents, with a specific focus on cyber crimes against women and children. Okay, so Ministry of Home Affairs had already operationalized this National Cyber Crime Reporting Portal. Apart from this, as per the data maintained since its inception, okay, so 3,17,439 cybercrime incidents and 5,771 FIRs have been registered up to February 28 in the country, and the conversion of complaints received into FIRs stood at 1.81%. Okay, so let's consider the Ministry of Home Affairs received some complaints and those complaints are being converted into FIRs. So that conversion ratio was 1.81%. And apart from this, Okay, apart from this, the government had approved the setting up of 1023 fast track special courts, including 389 exclusive POCSO courts. POCSO stands for like Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act, okay, for expeditious trial and disposal of cases related to rape and protection of children from Sexual Offences Act, okay. As per the published information, the conviction rate for POCSO cases in 2019 was 34.9%, okay. POCSO stands for Prevention of Children from Sexual Offences Act, okay. If you want to learn more, you can follow this reference link from The Hindu. You just need to click on this and you will be taken to the website of The Hindu, and you will be able to read this article from there itself, okay. You will be getting this particular PDF in the description of the YouTube video and in our Telegram channel as well, okay. So this PDF will be available in our Telegram channel and it will be available in the description, okay. So apart from this, the Lukman IAS has come up with 2 specific programs. These programs are very important. You can join these programs, like Lukman IAS Foundation Batch, okay. So the foundation batch will be available, and apart from this, you can also join the Public Administration Optional. So Ansari sir teaches Public Administration Optional, and this is one of the vastly adopted optional subjects by students, okay. So that's all from my side for the day. Thank you so much for attending this session. I hope you have a good day ahead.